Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I'm coming at you with another one of my Hail Caesar Wargaming Miniatures Germanic Tribesmen updates. Today is the 10th of July. It's already 1/3 of the way through the month, and I need to get cracking on these guys. But I did want to point something out, something that's going through my mind. But before I do that, let's just tell you the progress of where I'm at. As you can see, I've got my 151 tribesmen right here, and they're all fleshed, and about half of them have jackets, tunics painted. I still need to do the rest of the prime colors on those guys, and then we'll go into dipping and finishing up. It honestly, after experiencing these guys only taking me like 2 days, because I was focusing on just these 16, I think I could do all of these in like 4 days. So we're going to go ahead and work on these gradually throughout the month. We'll get these taken care of, and I'll give you updates every couple of days. Okay, so I've got my skirmishers finished. There's 16 skirmishers here. I actually uploaded a video of how I went about painting these skirmishers, so that's online right now. You can check that out. I think I did a really good job with those. Also, there's a new paintbrush that I was using right here. It's a paint pen with a brush tip for black lining. I think I'm going to grab the sepia one as well, just for the black lining that I want to do that with a subtle difference. With this is a sharp difference, and this really made a difference in my figures. I'm super impressed with these. All right, so now getting to the topic of, I got 2 topics that I really want to discuss with you in the progress of my Germanic horde. I have the cavalry. They still need to be glued together and put together and everything. I also have the cavalry from the Celts of the Romans that need to be finished. So I have one little command pack that I need to get from that, as well as I need to get a couple of generals for this army. So what I'm planning on doing is this coming weekend, I'm going to order additional Germans, additional commanders, my Celtic cavalry command for the Romans, and we should be good to go on everything I need to get the battles going in August. All right, having said that, I finished the 2 units of 8, making 16 skirmishers. Okay, so this is actually 2 units, but because they were finished and I had already glued them on 25mm round bases, I thought, like, how many would I be able to fit, or what would it look like if I put the 16 models on one of my 160 by 160mm bases, right? So, or are these 80? These are 80 by 80. I'm sorry. These are 80 by 80, right? It's 160 total across the whole frontage. So I wanted to see what it would look like. I put these round bases down. I'm sorry, the square bases, right? These metallic square bases. These are also 20mm. I put those down, and then I just stacked the figures on top of them, just to kind of give me an idea, like if I was to glue them on these square bases and use these as a movement tray for the unit, how would it look? Now that looks pretty good, to be honest. 4 ranks deep, 4 wide for one base. It'll be 8 all the way across, which is the recommended number of figures for the unit. That will look awesome, right? So I thought about it. As an alternative, I could, now what that does is it puts the movement tray to the maximum. Like those 20mm bases go all the way to the edge of the movement tray. And then I thought about it. I said, you know what? If I cut a figure out of the front and the back, I would have a total of 9 figures. And I was trying to figure out if there was a way for me to, and I'll just take the figures off, and you can kind of just see it using the bases. Okay, so if I take 3 by 3 for a total of 9 20 by 20s, which is the recommended base size for Hail Caesar, that would leave a lip around the movement tray for making an edge. Like I could make an edge around here so that the figures would not fall off of the movement tray. All right, so now let me... All right, and then there was an option where I grabbed a couple of Numidians here just to fill out my ranks. I could go with 9 per base, and that would leave a lip around the edges that I could use milliput or something like that to make like a little raised area around there to keep the bases inside the movement tray, and then the tray would still be the 160 millimeters wide. I'm leaning towards this right here. That's going to give me, because remember, it doesn't really matter how many figures you have in the unit. It's really you're going for looks. Now, so does this look thick enough? I've only got 3 ranks back. I've only got 3 figures across, or 6 total figures across. Does that really look deep enough or thick enough? I don't know if it does, you know, so that's what I'm struggling with. So if you have any suggestions or any ideas, let me know. But I do want to show you another thing I was thinking about, because as you know, I want to individually mount my figures, right, so that they could be used individually as figures for any other game. But I also kind of want to mount them, you know, on a base, kind of in random positions, so that they don't look like they're in formation. So they look like they're just a mob of guys. So I kind of want to mount them directly to the base. If I do that, then I don't need a lip, right? And I don't need to have exactly 9. I could go with maybe 10 figures per base or something like that. I could cram this guy in there as well, you know, and kind of just haphazardly put these models on the base, right? And that kind of looks cool as well. So I've been thinking about this. But here, let me show you this other thing I was thinking about. All right, now I've been thinking about using 25 millimeter square bases and not the 20s as they recommend, right? Because it's just recommended. It's not mandatory, you know. These 25s would fit, and they fit much bigger on the base, okay, leaving a much smaller area of a lip, right? So there's a very small lip around the edge. And then I could mount my figures directly to these 25 millimeter bases. Here, let me put these on there. What winds up happening here is they are exactly perfectly 3 ranks by 3 columns, right? All right. So then I was thinking to myself, does that really look good? You know, I don't like that white base there, but yeah, does that look, okay, here, does that look good? Does that really look good with 9 models on a 80 by 80? It kind of does. I'm kind of liking that look. You know, it does kind of still look like a warband. It still does look like a mob of guys. And by only using 9 figures, that 150 figures will go a lot further. I'll have, what's the math, you know? It'll be 15 bases, you know, 16 bases, I think. I think it was 16 bases, which is actually 8 units, and all I need is 9 units. But I don't know if 9 figures really is enough. Okay, so that's where my mind is going. I'm thinking like, how am I going to do this? Let me get these painted before I make that decision. Uh, I could always make the movement tray just a little bit bigger, and that way I could have, even if I use 20s, I could still go maybe, I could go maybe 12 figures on a base. So it would look, if I went with a slightly bigger base, I could go 4 across, because that would look really good, and then a random amount deep, like 3, right? So I don't think I brought enough of these bases. So, but you get the idea. And then there would be, uh, yeah, 4 wide and then 3 deep is definitely a possibility. And then if I go with 12 and I have 151, that'll get me 6 war bands and 6 plus war bands, and that's kind of what I'm needing to do the Romans, right? That I've got now. So that looks kind of good, the 4 across and only 3 deep. I can accept that, and with a little bit of gap in between. They don't have to be base to base. And this movement tray could be a little bit larger for uh, that. I could make a lip around the outer edge. It doesn't have to be perfectly square. The measurement that they recommend is either 160 to 200. So I could make this up to 100 millimeters. I probably won't do that. I'll probably be like a 85 or something like that. And that way there'll be a lip about that big all the way around. That's probably what I'm going to do. I don't know. I've talked myself through this, and we'll see. We'll see what I've got to do. We'll see what happens. Okay, now the second piece of information that I was going to talk about. I know this is a longer video, and I'll have to do some editing to make it shorter. But I've been here a while talking to you. You just don't know it. Unit tags. Okay, you notice that I'm going to be putting labels on the back of my units. So, like, if this was a warband, right, or a Roman legion, or a Macedonian phalanx, or whatever, I was going to put a little label on the back here that folds up, right? And then you can read the label, and it's going to give you all the combat stats, like what its clash is, what its sustained is, what its ranged value is, short and long, and like what's its stamina is, what its morale save is. All that can be written on that little label on one of the 2 bases. And then that unit would have, like when you're in fighting formation or whatever, you would see that label. And then when he goes into march column or whatever, you could still see that label. And that's great for a big unit like that. But what about a unit that operates in skirmish formation like this, right? Is this unit's not going to be able to have any labels, because all I've got are individual figures, and they are round, because I'm doing all my skirmishers on round bases. So, I mean, I could put one stat like clash, sustained, ranged. I could do something like that and just make the individual numbers, but I don't think what I'm going to do with that. In most of my armies that I've noticed, most of the scenarios, there's only 2 skirmishers per army, and those 2 skirmishers are exactly the same. So I'm probably going to have like a little card that I'm going to make, like a label, but the label just won't be glued on the back of these guys. It'll just be sitting in the army camp or whatever, where if you need to know what your skirmishers can do, you can just look down at your army camp or your side of the table. It'll have that little card for the skirmishers. So I'm coming with, I was struggling with that to like figure out how I was going to do that, but it looks like I'm going to do it like a separate card. Skirmishers are going to be the only ones, because cavalry, they can have labels. Artillery, they can have labels. My elephant can even have labels. Everybody can have labels, just not the skirmishers, because of their open order nature. All right, well, let me go ahead and get cracking on these guys, and I might even have to cut out some new bases, maybe just slightly bigger, and I'll start making some movement trays, and then I'm probably going to start mounting these guys on 20s, because I got a ton of those, and I'll catch you next time.